What's up, everybody? It's your boy Crazy B here, and I just kind of want to give you my review and impression of Star Wars Squadrons. It's a game I've been looking forward to ever since it was announced. It's already instantly one of my favorite games, but even though I'm a big Star Wars fanboy, I'm going to give you an honest opinion, and you can take it for what it's worth. Now, Star Wars Squadrons is priced at $40. It's a $40 game. It is not a full $60 game. In with that comes some good and comes some bad. But let's get into what's good. Let's break it down each section by each section. I'm going to start with gameplay. I'm going to start with gameplay in terms of its smoothness. Never have I picked up a game and instantly just been able to play it, and it's been smooth right from install. Now, if you play on PC, you probably know what I'm talking about. A lot of times when we get games, the settings are not optimized for the game to run at as many frames per second as it can. You often have stuttering issues and frame drop issues right out the gate, and you have to toy around with your settings to try to figure out what is optimal settings. In this case, I never had to touch settings whatsoever, and the gameplay was smooth. You literally install it and you pick it up and you play. Now, I can't speak to consoles, but I'm sure consoles don't have any issues either. There might be some bugs in the flying and stuff. I haven't come across any bugs. I haven't experienced any bugs. So for me, the gameplay has been nothing but smooth sailing since launch. And that's not something I can say a lot. You know how it is so frustrating to get a game, to want to play it, and for it to have stuttering issues, and to constantly have to figure out what are the right settings so that you don't experience the stuttering and the frame drops and everything and the lag, because you want to play a smooth game. In this case, I never had to touch settings, and I would say that is out of the box one of the best things about this game, at least for me as a PC player. But now I want to talk about gameplay in terms of the flying. Star Wars Squadron is a Star Wars flight simulator. You will play the entire game from a first-person perspective out of the cockpit of your chosen ship. And while at first I thought this might be a little complicated and might not be good enough, I was wrong. The flying from the cockpit is so satisfying. It really makes you feel like you're a pilot in the Star Wars universe. And it's not as limiting as people would think. You can get a sense of where fire is coming from. You can keep an eye on the bigger battle around you. You just can't do it visually. Now, there is things to look around, but you're not going to have the third person perspective where so you'll see where the person is. It really puts you into the seat of a pilot, and you have to figure it out on your own, and I love that challenge. I thought the hindrance would be the first person view from the cockpit. I was wrong. It is a phenomenal view. It's a phenomenal feeling to sit in the cockpit and feel like an actual fighter pilot. No better feeling. Okay, so gameplay in terms of frames and stuff has been smooth for me out of the box, and I've enjoyed the cockpit perspective for Star Wars Squadrons. The flying has been smooth. One thing I will say is, as you move around your ship and all that stuff, you can spin around, you can fly upside down, but you will never feel like you're flying upside down, which is, I think, something they really nailed. When you play space combat in Battlefront 2, if you maneuver your ship upside down, you have to remember that it's upside down as you're doing the controls. So if you try to, fly upside down to try to get, you have to remember that, and remember that your controls are now inverted because you're inverted. But here, if you roll around, it's as if from your perspective you're not upside down, you're just looking through. So the controls you set will never invert based on your positioning of your fighter, which is another great thing for the gameplay, because I can't tell you how many times I played Battlefront 2. I would fly upside down to try to get around something or whatever, and I forget I'm flying upside down. I hit the joystick the wrong way, and I crash and I die. So it's another thing that I just want to get off my chest that I love about the cockpit perspective. You never feel like you're upside down, and your controls never invert themselves as you swirl around your fighter. They're always going to remain, however you dip them, however you know your X and Y axes are, however you do it, they're always going to remain that, no matter how you position your fighter from the cockpit. So I do love that. Now let's get into the features of the game. The game has two features: a single player campaign and multiplayer. Let's start with single player. The single player story is good. Let's get that off the bat. It's good. Now when you start the game, you're going to go through a prologue sequence where you're going to play a mission from both the Empire and Rebellion side. After that, the story's optional. However, I will recommend it to anyone starting the game. I learned a lot of flying and things through playing the campaign before I jumped into multiplayer. It's not going to give you so much of an edge, but at least to learn the basics. It's a fun way to learn the basics, and kind of a fun way to learn a few extra maneuvers that you're not going to know otherwise. So play the story first. As for the story, the team at Motive had some very dedicated Star Wars fans write this. I'm going to attack the story from a couple different perspectives. One is the continuity of the story within the grander Star Wars story. This takes place after Return of the Jedi. Since Disney has been changing the Star Wars canon, they have been rewriting the time after Return of the Jedi, and one of the biggest things they wrote was the Aftermath trilogy of books. In that trilogy, Admiral Ray Sloane is the main villain. Is one of the main villains. So for them to take a character who was only big in a novel series and bring her to life in this game made my heart jump with joy. You know, because when you start the game, your first commander is Commodore Sloane, and throughout the story you will hear mention of an Admiral Sloane. There's a little slight spoiler. She's ultimately the person your squad is operating under, and who your commander is taking orders from. And with that being said, as you play the story, you have the option to engage with your squad mates in conversations. A lot of these conversations do very well in keeping continuity together. They make mentions of the Clone Wars, the original trilogy. They make mentions of other characters that you'll only read about in books and comics, and I was just impressed by the overall commitment to keeping this continuity within what Disney is establishing, and not just kind of go a ham-handed, oh, here's the good guys, here's the bad guys, here's the main plot story. So that was very good in terms of continuity within the greater Star Wars canon. I think the story, though, overall is good, but it could have been great. And there are several things in the story that I loved. One of them was every time you got the chance to talk to a squad mate on either side. Some of these squad mates have very good and interesting personal stories. For the Empire, my favorite squad mates are Shen. He's gonna be the pilot who never takes off his mask. His helmet, sorry, not his mask. He never takes off his helmet. And then I like Soul on the Empire side just because she makes me want to join the Empire. On the Rebel, I say Rebels like just out of habit. On the Rebel side, I love the squad leader Gunny. She has a great backstory. Frisk, the Trandoshan squad member, I like it. You know, I like that they gave a Trandoshan a spot in the Rebellion. I mean, you don't normally see that, so it was a great see. And then Grace is one of the more interesting squad members with a backstory, and I definitely recommend talking to her. So a lot of these guys have backstories, and again, that also kind of pulls in nicely the larger Star Wars canon through their backstories. So definitely recommend as you play through the story that you do engage with your squad mates. The story is about, if you play the story, it's about 6-7 hours. Typical Call of Duty campaign. I guess for $40 that's what you're gonna get. It's fine. The problem I have with the story is two things. It ends right when it is getting really good. There is no true finale to the story, in my opinion. Now, I can say I'm split 50-50 on that. One is good because maybe a Squadrons 2 will continue the story of Titan Squadron and Vanguard Squadron. I'd be okay with that. Same time, I don't know if we're getting a Squadrons 2, so it would have been nice to really get a full finality, at least for Titan Squadron, because we know the Empire eventually completely loses. So, seeing Titan Squadron be full-on defeated was something I wanted to see, but sadly that doesn't happen. Slight spoiler, sorry. But overall, the story is good. Could have been great, could have been better. It stops itself for being a $40 game. But it's an entertaining thing to sit through, and I think anyone who loves a good Star Wars story will enjoy the story itself. Okay? Now, the only other problem I have with the story was Wedge Antilles. He makes an appearance, you do fly a mission with him. My issue with Wedge is the voice. That's not Dennis Lawson, and it's not David Ackroyd. I don't know why, and I don't know how, but they chose not to hire Dennis Lawson or David Ackroyd to do the voice. And I think David Ackroyd, if anything, would have done the voice. He voiced Wedge in A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back until George, said Dennis Lawson can use his natural voice. So I think they would have been fine getting David Ackroyd. I think he would have took it and recorded the few lines. I don't know the true story behind it, whether it was budget issues or whatever. But that's the only thing really that kind of irked me, was that they did so much to stay so faithful to Star Wars, but the only place they really couldn't stay faithful was in their portrayal of one of the main characters from the original trilogy in his voice acting. Not trashing the voice actor. I'm just saying, I would have loved to have David Ackroyd say those lines, or Dennis Lawson. It would have been great. I would have jumped for joy in my Star Wars pajamas, but sadly they didn't do it. But overall, if I had to, like I said the story is a good story. It's an entertaining story. It's something, sit through. I don't know how replayable it is, but I would say maybe on a day you're bored, or maybe your internet goes out, can't play online, give the story another crack. One thing I would say about the story also is it's very reminiscent of, the old TIE Fighter, X-Wing, Rogue Squadron games. You're 100% in the cockpit of your ship throughout the entire missions. Nothing else. Some missions you could change ships. Most you really can't. But yeah, it's a good story. Now let's go to the multiplayer, where it's hoping to make its bread and butter. You have two modes, dogfights and fleet battles. Let's start with dogfights. Dogfights is straight up 5v5, team deathmatch, get 30 kills or have the most kills at the end of the time limit. It's honestly kind of fun. I can see it being something where a lot of tryhards are going to be competitive in, even though I know fleet battles is supposed to be the main competitive mode. But there are going to be people who just like to fly around and kill, and they're going to be in dogfights, and you're going to come across them. But I would say dogfights is fun. So far, I've played about an hour in dogfights. Never has any of them felt similar. They've all brought something new. They've all had different experiences, different levels of fun. Some dogfights, I got my butt whooped. by the other team. Some I was whipping butt. Some were close, and the ones that are close are the real fun ones. Every kill counts, and you're like, oh my god, I gotta, you know, and you know, you're right there, and it's 29-29. Next kill gets it, and you're just trying to make the play for your team. Those dogfights are the most fun. You know, so far I've played enough of dogfights. I don't feel it getting stale. But we'll see as that continues, which is the biggest concern about multiplayer. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. The next mode is Fleet Battles, which is the phased battle, the bread and butter of this game, where everyone's hoping to really, you know, have some fun in. 2 fleets, a rebel fleet and an imperial fleet, go at it. First phase is dogfighting. Second phase is destroying light cruisers. And the final phase is destroying the capital ship. Fleet battles is much harder than dogfighting. If you're good in dogfighting, that doesn't necessarily translate to fleet battles, because that has more going on. It has, you know, good AI. I would say there have been a couple times I've been playing fleet battles and the AI has gotten me more than a player. You know, player weakened me enough, I probably got away, but then an AI ship, AI turret or whatever got me. The thing with fleet battles is you have to communicate and work as a team. I've played with some that play as a team. We've done good, we've had good matches, win or lose. And then I've had ones where everybody kind of just did it on their own and we got destroyed. I would say I was surprised at how quickly momentum or morale shifts in fleet battles. It can really, you know, shift easily. For example, let's say you get past the dogfighting and you're attacking the enemy's cruisers. If all 5 of you die on an attack run to those cruisers, the momentum shifts immediately to the other team. Pretty much. I mean, not entirely, but like if they take all 5 out and then they take out like your light attack ship that goes with you when you're on the offensive, that's it. The other team's now coming for your cruisers. You know, Star Destroyer shields are so hard to bring down in fleet battles that you really have to push aside a ship and get a loadout in it. But if you don't help, so let's say someone has a bomber that can really do damage. If you don't help that bomber get to that Star Destroyer, they're easy pickings for the other team. And then they're even easier pickings for the Star Destroyer because of the turrets. And so fleet battles is not just, oh, we have to do one XYZ. It's you really have to play together and you really have to strategize. And you really have to learn to complement your team. It is not, it seems easy. Okay, we take out fighters in this phase, boom. We move on to the next phase, boom. It's not like that. It can swing the other way, and I've been in matches where it swung the other way and it never swung back because we just couldn't, because the other team was good, because 2 players on the other team would run as bombers, 1 would run as support, the other 2 as fighters. They would cover the bombers, and the bombers came and they did damage. They got the shields down, and the fighters did what they could, and you know, and it really does make a difference how you attack a fleet battle. It's not just, you know, ham-fisted, do XYZ and take out this objective. You really do have to work together. But the overall worry about multiplayer is that there's not enough content there. This game is not meant to appeal to everyone. It's appeal to people like me, hardcore fans who want this flight simulator experience. But even I'm saying, okay, fleet battles, dogfights, and they're different enough every time to not feel stale. But there are going to be times where I'm just like, I want something a little different than a dogfight, different than a fleet battle. You know? And I wonder at what motive and EA's plan is to support that post-launch. I think we have a chance that they will actually really support it. But it depends on the sales numbers, obviously, and the amount of people who play at any given time. So if the game has a good life span, I think they will support it. If we got EA to fix the disaster that was Battlefront 2, we can get EA to support the gem that is Star Wars Squadrons. This is a gem, and I hope they one day decide to open up the game more in terms of more player pilots in game modes. Private matches so people can play just with their friends and have fun and do crazy things. And I hope there's more things next for this. And I wouldn't also be surprised if one day this becomes an esport game. I think that's something else they were going for, making this sort of an esport game. Don't really have an opinion on that. But, my hope is that this game really does kind of open up within the next year or two. Because I don't know if we're going to get a Squadrons 2. This game is not running on microtransactions, so this could just be the final product. And they say, hey, listen, this is what we gave you. We said we weren't giving you more. Which would really, really stink and cut down on the potential that this game is turning out to be. But at the same time, this is what EA, has turned, players to do, because they have the bad reputation of over monetizing games to the point where you just don't want to even buy them. But Star Wars Squadron it's a phenomenal game. For $40, it's a phenomenal game. If I had to rate it, it's a good game for the price. $40, you're not gonna go wrong. But if you're not into this flight simulator, don't buy it. Save your money. You're not gonna enjoy it. But yeah, I would say it's a good game, and I would say if you're not truly committed to really enjoying this, you can get it on a sale. If you really are about that, I love Rogue Squadrons and TIE Fighter and X-Wing from the 90s, then this game is your game. But if you're just a casual, I would say wait for sale, or just skip it altogether, because this is going to become a niche game. This is going to have a cult following, and this is going to have players who are going to play just this, like me, play this 90% of the time, and I'm going to get really good at it. And if you're just not putting in the time, you're going to feel overwhelmed. And that has happened. I have already, and we're a few days after launch, I have played this game and felt overwhelmed in multiplayer by some other players. Because there's just, if you're good, you're good. If you have a good setup, you have a good setup. And there's a lot. It's very skill based. This isn't gonna hold your hand. But at the same time, I would say every time I play, I get better. So if you're someone who thinks, I'll just think you can get better. If I can get better, you can get better. Because I will say I am no great player in any game, but I've gotten better. Now every time I'm in dogfights, I'm fighting for first or second spot on my team, and my team overall is always competitive in it. And this is just me playing alone. I don't have a group of friends playing this with. My friends aren't interested in this game for whatever reason. But yeah, I play and I get better each and every time. And, so there is that factor too, that you may not start out the best, but yes, you can get better. It is not impossible to get better. If I can get better, you can get better. So anyways, thank you so much for listening to my review of Star Wars Squadrons. I really hope you enjoyed the gameplay in the background, and I will see you next time, guys. Alright? So, this is Crazy B, standing by.
Oh.
This is Crazy B, and I'm out. See you next time, guys.